I'm trying to unhandcuff him and he keeps turning so I can't take the handcuffs off of him. And I stand up and he jumps up and he grabs hold of me and he won't move away from me. Do you know why? He's afraid I'm going to shoot him. When the State Department sat there and said, we are inviting you into the Muslim world, I knew that was the Lord going, this is your calling. This is your identity's calling. And so I got charged with insulting the Quran, which is 10 years in prison. And so I got arrested for that and had to go to trial for it. And when I notified the embassy guys, hey, I just got arrested, I'm going on trial. It's 10 years in prison and I'm not allowed to testify because I'm not a Muslim and nobody here is going to help me. The U.S. was like, good luck. Tell me in your life, what are you most afraid of in your life right now? Fear is the beautiful God-given emotion that points to things that you believe about yourself, God, and the world. It's not true. That's what fear does. Fear points at things that you're going to do or believe that hurt you. That's the value of it. He said, but I'm going to tell you something. I know you're here because Jesus wants you to be here and wants you to talk to Muslims about Jesus. He said, but you better find another way to say it. Because every time you open your mouth, you offend us and you're going to get killed here saying it the way you say it. Find another way to say it.
For anyone listening, thinking, I want a relationship like that, I want to be able to hear from God, what is your best advice? Where can they start?
I imagine when you were getting hired by the State Department, I imagine they had a very thorough vetting process with you.
Yes, they did.
So do they come to your house? How does it work?
No, my very first interview was in a bar here in McLean, actually at 11 o'clock at night. I got called at home and by a magistrate, which was weird. And so I answered the phone and he identifies himself. I know him. We had worked cases together. And he said, I want you to come meet me right now at this pub in McLean. And I said, okay. And he said, there's someone I want you to meet and have a discussion with. And I said, okay. I thought I was in some kind of trouble because I'd already been suspended twice for some of my little experiments with God.
Yeah, we're going
to
come back to that. Yeah. Make a note to come back to that.
I mean, it is risky when you're trying things, and sometimes they really work and sometimes they don't. But so I thought I didn't. Why are they calling me at home? Why won't he tell me who I'm meeting with? I thought I was in some kind of trouble, which is typically where you go to first when you get called in the middle of the night.
And what's a magistrate, by the way? So
a magistrate is like a part of the court where when you make an arrest or you're getting search warrants, they're who you go to get the warrants or the search warrants. So he knew who I was because I would come in with cases and I'd say, I need a search warrant for this, or we want to arrest this guy and here's my probable cause. And he would issue all the documents. So I knew him, not super well, but I knew him and he obviously knew me. And I was an investigator at that point in my career, detective investigator. And so I go to this bar in McLean, this pub, which I don't think it's still there, it was like in a television show, and he meets me at the door. We walk into this back corner, into this booth. There's a guy sitting in the booth smoking a cigarette, drinking whatever he was drinking. And he just looked mean. And I sat down and he had a folder in front of him and he didn't introduce himself or anything. He goes, I want to know how you do this. He's tapping the folder. I want to know how you do this. And I'm like, do what? And he said, whatever you're doing in this, and he had a folder of all my casework for 5 years. I was in my 5th year in the police department. He had all 5 years of cases I'd worked. And he said, I want to know how you do this. Whatever you're doing in here, nobody taught you in a police academy. I want to know where you learned it, and I want to know if you can articulate what you're doing. I was 27 years old, almost 28. And I said, well, like what, for example? And so he opens it up and he just starts flipping through these different cases over 5 years. And he says, this one, start with this one. And I said, okay. And I said, in that one, there was a drug problem in a subsidized housing project. We could, you can arrest all day. We're not going to stop it. So I was just praying and asking God, is there another way to think about how to do this? Because we had done everything I was trained to do. I ran out of stuff. And I had an idea basically from the scriptures. You have an idea and you think, oh, that's like in the Bible too. And so it's like this, and then you confirm it kind of in the word like you would in training or something. And so I told the State Department official, I said, so I went to the drug dealer gang leader guy and I invited him to my house for dinner.
It checks out.
and the gang guy said, I have never had a police officer invite me to their house for dinner. And I said, I've never invited the head of a drug gang to my house for dinner, so we'll have a great time together. And so he agreed. And I'm telling this to the State Department guy who's very dubious about all of it. And I said, and the guy came to our house and I walked him through what his real identity is versus the false one that he's working out. But there's a true one there, and what it could look like and what it would be, if he understood the one that gave him identity in the first place, God, Christ, and it transformed his life. And then he came back into the gang and he stopped the drugs. He ended it. He brought it, which is the Samaritan woman story. It's the Zacchaeus story. It's all the stories in the Bible. Jesus talks to one person and leaves. And that person is the one that initiates the movement. And so I told him that, and he goes, so you ask God a question and you have an idea and then you act it out. And I said, yep, that's basically it. And he said, yeah, I don't like that. He said, but it seems to work. And so then he had this progression in his mind, like that was a pretty minor case. Then he started going into the deeper, more complicated cases where I was really like risking a lot, my career and jail time and all of that. And he wanted to, until he got to this one case in particular that he really wanted to get to, which was, it was something I had just done that year. And he said, why did you de-arrest this guy? And so what I had done, I had watched a guy commit 2 felonies, including assaulting a police officer. So I was the witness to the events and arrested the guy, and then taking him to the jail to process him. This is the end of my police career, going into leveling up with Jesus, because Jesus never lets you stay at one level. He's always like, let's go up another level, unless you don't want to. And so I can tell you all the details of the case. It's pretty beautiful and dramatic what happened, but I was driving the guy basically to jail, and he was talking to me from the back seat and inside my spirit. And by this time in my career, I never doubted what I heard. I knew I was done debating with God. Like, is that you? Is that me? All that stuff. Because you just train and discipline. Like, I know the voice. I know it. It's not mine. It's different than mine. And I know it. I recognize it. And whatever the Lord says it produces life and redemption. It's what it does, even in the worst situations. And this voice in my head or in my heart, however we describe it, was like, stop the car and let this guy, de-arrest this guy and let him go. And I was like, wow, I know that's you, Lord, because where is this idea? It's not coming from the enemy.
Or the HR handbook, I imagine.
That's right, yeah. It's not coming from the general orders, although you have the power to de-arrest. Like, I never broke the law, but I was like, there's a lot of ramifications, because he assaulted a police officer from another squad, and you don't de-arrest a person that assaulted another squad.
Because that would earn you a pretty bad reputation among your fellow.
I would be iced out so fast. And then he had committed a burglary and then assaulted a police officer. So, we had all the stolen property, we had everything. He was clearly the guy, but it was Christmas Eve day, which I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but so I was driving him you actually were supposed to drive him to the precinct of the officer he assaulted. This is in the 80s, and drop him off there. That's really the way you do it. And so he knew, the guy that I arrested knew that's what I was going to do. That's what you do. You assaulted that police officer. That's not allowed. I'm going to take you to his squad, and they're going to process you, so to speak. And that guy grew up in the neighborhood. He knew that was going to happen. But so I had actually handcuffed him, arrested him. He was a big guy, and put him in the back of my cruiser. The ambulance took the police officer away. I'm driving him to the precinct, and he starts talking to me, the person, the suspect, and he says, because when he had hit the guy, he had knocked the cop unconscious. That's how big he was. And I came up on him with my gun drawn, and I was like, all right, on your knees. And he dropped immediately to his knees, and he starts apologizing, and I went to handcuff him, and my handcuffs would hardly go around his wrists because he was a big guy. And he said, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I was freaking out, Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, right. Yeah. Put him in my car. Heard this story a million times. He goes, it's Christmas Eve. My wife's in law school. And from the neighborhood he's from, nobody's in law school in that neighborhood. Nobody's even married in that neighborhood. He goes, my wife's in law school. We're broke. I want to get her a Christmas present. I've never committed a crime. again, you're watching a guy cold cock a uniformed officer. It's like, this isn't your first time you've been in an altercation, and you're a really good fighter. And he said, but I wanted to give her a present. She's worked so hard. I'm walking through these apartments. I see a sliding glass door. It's open. There's stuff. I just took it. I thought I pawned, this kind of thing. I'm like, just like, don't even talk to me. And, I'm a police officer. I'm on one team. He's from the other team. He's a bad guy. I'm a good guy. And like, this is justice, and too bad. Plus, I don't believe anything you're saying. So I'm driving, and all of a sudden, wow, this impression hits me really strong. Let him go. De-arrest him. And I immediately was like, I can't. That's a beautiful thought. I can't, for lots of reasons. I'll lose my job. You can't de-arrest a guy that just feloniously assaulted another police officer. What if he hurts somebody? All these things where I'm liable, the police department's liable. You're going to lose your job. That squad's never going to talk to you again. You're never going to work anywhere in the police department, because if you let him go, it's not justice, and all this. And I'm saying that back. I'm actually saying it out loud. Like, because I knew that the Lord was asking me to do this. And obedience is better than sacrifice. Obedience is to hear and respond. That's the Hebrew, to hear and respond. That's what obedience is. You hear and you respond. And it's greater than any sacrifice you'll ever make. And so I'm driving, and this is what the State Department guy kept asking me. What next? Why did you? What does the voice sound like? Where did you feel it in your body? Like that kind of thing. He wanted to know exactly how I was doing this. And so I pull my car over to the side of the road, and I'm mad. I'm frustrated. And the guy in the backseat, he goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "You just better keep your mouth shut right now, because you do not want to interrupt the conversation that's going on inside of my head right now. It's your advantage.
You have the right to remain silent."
Yeah. I said, "It's your advantage to stay out of this conversation, because you have an advocate up here that you have no idea about." And he actually kind of got it, what I meant. And so I'm back and forth, and I just know the Lord kept saying to me, "Is your career more important than the guy in the back seat? Is your position, is your livelihood more important? Are you more important than the guy in the back seat? Because you're white and you grew up in this neighborhood and you know Jesus and he did it and all that. Are you more valuable than him? And he broke the law and you didn't break the law, and justice has to be served, and you're the arm of justice." Like, really? Or is his life important? And so I got out and I walk around and I open up the door and I go, "Get out." And he's like, he pushes himself back up further into the car and he goes, "Why?" And I go, "Just get out. I'm not going to explain. Just get out of my car." And he goes, I don't want to get out." It's super interesting. This is our culture. I'm trying to set a guy free and he's afraid of it.
Wow.
Because he doesn't think I'm going to set him free. So I pull him, I fight him out of the car, which must have looked hilarious to people driving by. I was like, "Is he fighting him out of his car?" I get him out of the car and I'm trying to unhandcuff him, and he keeps turning, so I can't take the handcuffs off of him. And then finally I knock him down on the ground and I de-handcuff him. And I stand up, and he jumps up and he grabs hold of me, and he won't move away from me.
Wow.
Do you know why? Do you know what he's afraid of? He's afraid I'm going to shoot him. He's afraid I'm going to say he broke free and I'm going to shoot him. That's our culture. Wow. That's our culture. That's how at war we are. And I'm pushing him away, and he runs back and hugs me. Again, this must have just looked absurd to people passing by. And so finally I push him away, and I run and jump in my car and I drive away and leave him there on the side of the road. And so by this time, the other squad and the other precinct, they are aware of the situation, and they've assembled at their precinct waiting for me to drop this guy off, and I don't show. And so they call over to my captain, and I'm pulling into, because I got to go tell my captain what I did. So it's like this, the challenge about obedience is not just hearing what God's inviting you into, but then you have to go explain it to people that don't know God. Which is it's harder than just hearing your own little voice and doing what God says. It's like, now I got to turn around and try to explain to a system that's, built on really conflict why I de-arrested the guy. So I go into my captain. He's like, "Where is the guy?" And I said, "I de-arrested him." And then there's just this silence, it's like, I can't believe you just said that, you dear. Now, legally, I can do it. I didn't break the law. I knew in the general orders where I could like wiggle around on this, but it was a huge risk. And my captain, he was so mad he didn't know what to say. And but he had been my captain for 5 years, and so he's seen me do. This is important to believers. You have to process up to certain levels, so that the world around you understands what you're doing.
Like he knew you had a track record of doing things a little unorthodox.
He said it. He goes, I've seen you do crazy stuff before, and it's usually worked. Not always, but usually. And he said, and he happened to be a Mormon. And so he found me very challenging to him personally, because I would talk about God and he'd be like, yeah, I don't know. And he even would ride around me sometimes on shift just to watch what I do. This is just being a witness. That's what a witness is. It's not like trying to, prove stuff to people. It's like, just let them be with you and watch what happens when you're with a believer. So he said to me, okay, he said, you have, because it was Christmas Eve, he said, you have 2 weeks for this to become a really good idea, or you're not only fired, we're probably going to arrest you for what you did, but I'll give you 2 weeks. It's like a Christmas break. Thanks.
Merry Christmas. Yeah. And
come back after Christmas. But, and then they suspended me, but he didn't fully suspend me. They took me off the street and I had to work the front desk. And so I went home and I told, Donna, my wife, I was like, I don't know. I might have I might be the end of my career in this way. But and then she was always super encouraging. It's like, well, it's the famous line: are you interested in your career for Christ or the cause of Christ? What are you more interested in? And so I was working the desk. Guys on my squad were mad at me.
Did you hear from the other precinct guys?
Yeah, I heard from him. I had to go make it right with that guy. I mean, I really did. I had to go explain to him why I did what I did, not to disrespect him, but I mean, he didn't fully understand, but like we came to, okay, we got it, we worked it out. And so, yeah. So I'm sitting at the desk, on the night shift, and the phone rings, and this civilian and female employee comes over to me. She goes, hey, there's a phone call. I think it's for you. And it's the phone, and it's the guy that I de-arrested. And he said, is this Officer Winship? And I said, yeah. And he goes, do you know who I am? And I'm like, yeah, I know who you are. And he goes, I'm the guy you de-arrested. I'm like, I know that's who you are. How many people do you think I de-arrest? I know who you are. Like, you don't have to identify yourself to me. I know who you are. He said, I know you did what you did because you think God told you. And he said, and I appreciate it, and I want to pay you back. And I said, you don't have to pay me back. He said, no, I want to pay you back. And he said, at midnight, and he told me the night, like 2 nights down the road, at midnight, there's a black Porsche coming through this intersection. Pull him over. Make him open his trunk. And I'm like,
bribing an officer too.
I'm on suspension. I can't even, he said, get somebody to do it. So I got one of my partners. I went, but my partner had to make the stop. And sure enough, around midnight, we're staking this intersection out, and this black Porsche comes through, and my partner stops him and gets him to open up the trunk. And it's this huge narcotics bust. I mean, massive narcotics bust. And so we make the arrest, notify the narcotics guys. They're like, how do you know about this car? Like, you have an informant, who is it? And I'm like, yeah, no, this is call-in tip. And so after that, the guy calls me back. He said, I know you stopped the car. And I said, we're even, we're totally even. He goes, oh no. He goes, we're not even. He said, because this isn't about me and you being even. This is about God and me. And he said, I want to repair the community that I've been a part of damaging. And so we worked together for 1 year, me and him. And we did the craziest stuff together. And I never told anyone who he was, because after 3 months, DEA wanted to know who my source was. The FBI, because we broke a gambling ring. We made arrests. So here in DC, we made arrests from Boston to Miami, me and him together. I mean, he made me famous. This guy. And he had never committed a crime in his life. And his wife was in Howard Law School. Wow. Everything he said was 100% true. But I almost missed it because of the way we look at the world, right? Even as a believer, I still look at the world in these categories of good guys and bad guys. And it's just wrong. It's not the lens that Jesus looks at people. And as much as we don't want to look at people that way, that's how we do. And because we're afraid for ourselves. And so we worked together for a year, and we just loved each other. We just became so close. And, and my captain was like, this is a great idea. This was a great idea. And then, lots of, I always let the people above me take the credit for it. You don't want to take the credit for stuff because that's the wrong thing to do. But, and of course the Lord got all the credit. I mean, every time my captain's like, how did you know to do that? And I was like, it's called prayer. You know what it is. You know what I'm talking about. So we went through the year. We went through 12 months together, me and this guy, and he, right around Christmas of the following year, he had me following this car, right? Not far from here. We were following this car, and he goes, we got to get these two people, as a man and a woman together. And so we pull into the parking lot over in Tyson's Corner, actually. And the woman gets out of the car, and she has an overcoat on. She spins around when she gets out of the car, and she has a Uzi hooked under her arm. And they were Colombians. And I said to him, okay, no, you're done now. You're finished, because these people, they will kill me, but they will definitely kill you, and they will find out who you are. And we're not doing this anymore. It's not worth it. And so I turned that couple over to the DEA, and I said to him, we're not going to meet we're going to meet one more time, and then we're never meeting ever again. And he was sad, and I was sad, because we really loved each other. And so I went to my captain, and I said, okay, I'm losing mine. He's out. He's done. He's going to get killed. It's not worth it. But I think we need to thank him. And my captain said, what do you want to do? And I said, let's pay his wife's full law school tuition as a gift from the police department. And my captain goes, we don't do stuff like that. And I said, I think we could. Why not? Why can't we?
Hey, Cap, do you get it now? We've talked about this before, Captain.
It's a good idea. And so he got me in, which isn't normal. I said, get me into Crime Solvers, get me into one of their secret meetings, and let me present. And he's like, cops can't go in there. And I said, you could get me in there. And so he, when he arranged it, and I went into this meeting with these, CEOs or whatever. And I had posters of all the arrests we'd made over a year. I mean, I said, if you gave him $1,000 for every arrest we've made, it's more than his wife's law school tuition. And they were very moved by it. And the Crime Solvers people, and they were like, why did you de-arrest? So every time I got to talk about, well, it's called prayer, and can you hear from God? And what if all police officers could hear from God? How different would this all look?
Mm-hmm.
So you always got to be a witness.
And what is Crime Solvers?
Crime Solvers are the ones that give $1,000 for every felony conviction. It's just business people that donate money to support informants and information being coming.
Very cool.
Yeah, they have them on the television sometimes, the Crime Solvers numbers, and you can make an anonymous tip.
Oh, it's to incentivize informants.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
but I just had so many felonies that I just said, let's give them $1,000 for every one. And so
you offered a wholesale discount as opposed to the a la carte felony pricing.
Like, you'll never get this opportunity again. So they agreed. And so they gave me the money, and I put it in a Christmas card. It was actually a cashier's check from Crime Solvers and a Christmas card. And I met with him, and I said, I loved working with you, and I'm glad we met, and I know the Lord put us together. Mm-hmm. I said, but I think we're done now, because things have seasons. And, but I want to thank you. And here's a gift from the police department for all you've done. He opened it up, and he just cried his eyes out. And I said, yeah, I never want to see you again. And I've never seen him ever again.
Oh, so I have like 1,000
I think
questions.
Wow.
But I want you to just take us back to when you started really seeking the Holy Spirit in your work as a police officer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So really the whole reason I wanted to be a police officer, because of a very spiritual experience I had when I was in 8th grade. That I knew was to me, the whole Bible is just God inviting humanity into amazing stuff, and what happens when they do, and what happens when we say no. Like, that's basically the Bible to me. And He never stops inviting to higher levels. It's just we won't go. We're afraid. It's like when you read the scriptures, there's no example of a person really pursuing God that can't find God and hear God.
Amen.
But there's a million examples of people that can hear exactly what is inviting them into and say no.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, how do you know it's God's will? I'm like, that's not going to ever be the question. The question is like, why won't you do it when you know it? That's going to be that's the big debate. No one, yeah. So, so when so in 8th grade, I grew up in a pretty strict, my mom's very strict, independent Baptist. And, so no movies, no rock music, none of that kind of stuff. So I snuck in a movie when I was 14 just to see why God couldn't go in a movie theater.
Which movie do you remember?
Serpico was the movie. I didn't know it. I had no idea what the movie was. My question was, by 8th grade, I was like, why, if God is omnipresent, why can't he go in a movie theater? Like what's in there that's so I went in, I didn't know what the movie was. I just wanted to see what happens when you go into the heart of evil. And so I'm sitting there in this theater and the movie comes on and it's the movie Serpico. Al Pacino playing real life Frank Serpico, the police detective from New York, who takes on he takes on police corruption, just one guy by himself, and the Knapp Commission, all this forms. And I'm watching this movie in 8th grade, and as soon as it opens up, the opening scene is the police officer. He gets shot in a drug buy that his squad sets up, so he gets shot, and then they leave him. They won't help him because he's battling corruption. So now looking back, I'm 65. Looking back, I just watched the Lord design this whole thing so that I'm in 8th grade in a place I'm not supposed to go, which is key in my life. He was always going to invite me to places you're not supposed to go. See, he's built that identity's present, and he's just like David throwing rocks and protecting sheep and writing terrible poetry when he's a young kid. He's being the king already. He's already being the king. But sometimes parents don't get it, or we don't get it. That what he's doing is important to him later, but you might think it's a waste of time. But so I'm in there, and as soon as the movie opens up, the cinematography, the acting, all of it just hits me like the most beauty I've ever experienced in my life, which is why I love the arts so much. And I think the enemy hates the arts, but it hits me, and I'm watching this one person take on a whole police, even though he doesn't want to. He just doesn't want to be corrupt. He says, you do it. I don't want to do it, but he can't not be involved. And so I'm watching that movie and I just start to cry. And I cry and I cry and I cry. And I'm like, why am I crying? What is this inside of me that's just exploding out of me? What is this? It's greater than the movie. It's greater than anything I've ever known. I heard the Bible my whole life up until that point. This is another whole thing. And so at the end of the movie, I knew that somehow God was inviting me into something massive, but I didn't know how to articulate it. And I wasn't sure it was the God I knew because it was in the wrong place. I was in the wrong location for God to meet me. So I was confused on that point, but I knew that whoever this was, it was amazing. And the beauty was so deep. I just cried. And so at the end, because, an independent Baptist, if you don't go forward, God can't do anything with you unless you go forward. So at the end of the movie, I went forward. Everyone was leaving and I went forward, and I went to the front of the theater and I got up on the little stage crying. And I just said to God, I want to be this. It was weird. I didn't want to do this. I want to be this. I want to be this. And the only metaphor in my mind was police. Like there it was. It's a metaphor. Everything's a metaphor. And so right then, 8th grade, I said, I will be this. And I've never, to this day, never changed my mind, not one moment. That's why we spend so much time with middle schoolers, because that's the age, even in scripture, where God's doing a lot of cool stuff and people, Mary and David, they're young. Anyway, and so that was my commitment, and I wanted to be that. And then when I was going into my senior year in high school, a nurse in the hospital shared Christ with me. And then I knew it. Then I could put it all together. It's like, that was you. Like the guy that Jesus heals and he doesn't know who Jesus is. He's like, I don't know who that was. Someone did that to me, but I'm going to go find out who it was. And then, so when this amazing nurse was talking to me in the hospital, I never met anyone like her. And she was sharing, I was cussing her out because I was mad because it was an injury from wrestling and I didn't think I could pass a police physical, and I was mad. And she was saying, she would sit next to me and go, look, your body's going to get well. It's your heart that's going to hurt you. Your anger's going to kill you. Let me help you get that well. I never had a person talk to me like that before.
That was the nurse?
What a great nurse.
Seriously. Wow.
But you know what I learned? This is what I recognized about her. There were lots of good healthcare professionals in that hospital. She wasn't her vocation, wasn't her identity.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, so I knew when I met her, because everything's about models and seeing people like there it is, like why we have to lift Jesus up, because we need the model of Christ. But I would cuss her out, and I wouldn't even let her talk to me. And then she would stand up because I was really being nasty to her, and she would look at me and go, all right, I'll see you tomorrow. Like I hadn't offended her in any way. And I was trying as hard and she would come back the next day like she never met me. Hi. Oh, we need to work on that anger. And she would just start again.
She was unoffendable.
Right.
Wow.
She was unoffendable, and her love was greater than my hostility. Like her love was just absorbing all of my hatred. And so by the third day that she came back in, like, we're going to do this again and again, she's going to outlove me. And I knew she is so powerful. And and when I was discharged from the hospital, she never knew that she had an impact on me at all. I never told her. I never responded to her. The whole time she was just killing me. And so when I got released from the hospital, I was going home, and I said to God, if I could be a policeman like she's a nurse, if I could walk into places filled with hatred and hostility with that level of love and come back unoffended again and again, that would be the greatest police officer that ever lived. And so I said, that's my whole salvation prayer was, can you make me a police officer like she's a nurse? 10 years later, when I made detective, I went back to find her. I've never been able to find her. I wanted to thank her. I went to the hospital. It's up here. And I went in and I said, I was in this hospital 1977. I was on the 3rd floor. There was a physical therapist in here. I was in here this week. Find her record and tell me who she is. And the clerk said, he said, I can't give you that information. I'd have to be working a homicide or something. And I said, you will be working a homicide if you don't give me that information. But I've never been able to find her. My son's a special agent. We've just never been able to find her.
We should have tracked. That would have been cool if we had tracked her down for this. Like, Jamie, what would you say if she was here right now?
Here's what I will say about her. That one day when she's in heaven, she was a single mom from West Virginia. That's the only thing I know about her. It's the only thing I ever knew about her. Just this beautiful, amazing human that did that level. That's why I love people like her who nobody knows about. One day she's going to stand up at the Bema seat, when the Lord calls her name, and thousands of Muslims are going to stand up and thank her for what she did in the Muslim world.
That's amazing.
We like to ask weird questions on this podcast. Have you ever wondered if she was an angel?
I did. I have. Mm-hmm. I have wondered that. We have experienced angels in other situations. I don't think she is, just because she was so, it's funny, human. Mm-hmm. She was just so human. And all I remember her saying, she goes, look, I'm a single mom. I worked my way through nursing school at night. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. That's how she talked. And she was just so beautiful. It just cut my heart the way she talked.
God bless her.
Yeah.
All right. So Jamie, you mentioned leveling up, and one thing I love about your story is you got some early training in living by the Spirit and little manna from heaven and day by day. Could you talk to a little bit? I know a lot of people also are hurting right now financially and have a lot of uncertainty about what's going on. Maybe you could educate us a little bit. Take us back to, there was a famous incident, the savings and loans crisis, right? Yeah. And God got to harvest a little bit of faith training with you.
Yeah. When I went into the police department as a believer, then when I got on the street, I wanted to model like that nurse. And so I would be in these, once I got through probation, can't really experiment when you're on probation, but my training officer didn't appreciate it. But when I got on my own, I would go into these situations and I talked to people like the nurse talked to me. Right? And that's how I started to ask God, what would you say now? What would you say in this situation? Because my training how do you stop a domestic dispute? All this. And so I just started to practice and then got up to the level where I was de-arresting people like that and got interviewed and offered a job. Then after all of that, we went to grad school, and because I wanted a master's degree in order to go back into the Muslim world at a different level. And so we went to grad school, and my wife and I said, we just decided we're not going to work. We're just going to go straight through if God wants us to do grad school. And we had saved a ton of money and sold a house and all. We were like didn't have to worry about money at all. And so we are going to spend 2 years in grad school under this very famous linguist who was teaching in the US for a short amount of time. So we moved to the state where that was going to happen. And we're there, and we have 2 kids at the time. And yeah, Monday morning, it was like Black Sunday, I think they called it, in 87. And our financial guy calls us on a Monday morning, and he goes like, I don't know how to tell you this, but like, you guys, it's all gone. Everything's gone. And I'm like, what do you mean it's gone? Can we just wait it out? And he's like, you can't wait this one out. You're not gonna be able to wait this out. It's gone. So years of saving and being smart and all that stuff, gone. And we had, I don't know, $135 left of years of work and saving. And we had just, for the Lord, turned down another lucrative assignment to go to grad school and just be students, because I wanted to go straight through and get back out there. And we're sitting there on the couch and looking at our bank statement, and that is $100 and something like that. And I was so mad. I was saying to God, you just took away everything we have. And I haven't even paid the tuition yet, where I was going to wait. The next week I was going to pay the tuition for the whole thing. Now I can't pay the tuition, can't pay the house rent. You have 2 kids.
And you've been being obedient. That's the worst part, right? It's like you were de-arresting people. You were being obedient. You're like, I did all the tough stuff.
I reminded God of all of that. Yeah, I did. In detail, a lot of detail. Yeah, that's just like, and this is why you need to be joined together with another beautiful, true identity in your partner, because Donna, it didn't faze her. And she looked at it. It was hilarious. And I was furious and like, what are we going to do? And she said, well, what we ought to do is like, let's just go out and blow the rest of this and get down to 0 and see what happens. That's what she said to me. And I was like, what are you, nuts? And she's like, no, let's just go get to 0 and let's just get to the 0 and just see what happens.
I like the way she thinks.
Stop avoiding it.
Yeah, I figured you do. Yeah. Poor Derek.
So we did. We just went out and, bought groceries, and we went to 0.
This is back when you could buy groceries for under $137.
Yeah, that's right. Back in those days. Yeah, exactly. And we went to 0, and then we went all the way through grad school, never working, never borrowing any money, and we paid everything in cash on the dates that was needed all the way through. Okay. 2 years of.
You have to. I know you have so many cool stories, but give us some examples of how, just really so people can be encouraged. And we know results may vary. This is not a blanket guarantee, but God met your needs like manna from heaven. Yeah. What are some examples?
It's exactly, and it is manna from heaven. It's not a big prosperity. It's like there was enough when there needed to be enough, and it was so liberating, because you get to realize what are we afraid of? Like, what are we afraid of? And what the Lord wanted to do is like we realized that later when we were overseas, we were gonna the banks in the country we were in would embezzle all of the funding that came in for us, and we had to live in 0 in a foreign country for months.
Wow.
He was training us. Everything is about preparation for the next level up. And so in grad school, we'd never lived like that before, 0. And the Lord's like, I don't want you to work. I want you to go to grad school. I will take care of. So we had to pay the tuition. And so what it does is like you get on your face before the Lord and say, okay, what's the strategy? What's the plan? How do we do this? We're willing to do it. We don't know how. Tell us how to do it. And so 2 days before the tuition's due, there's a letter in our mailbox, and it was from this couple. Yeah, hey, we were praying for you guys. We know you're on a journey. We wanted to help out if we could. They didn't know we lost money. We never told anyone anything that we do.
It's probably embarrassing to.
Yeah, exactly. And they had mailed it to an old address. So he had sent it months ago, but it got sent all over the place, and it was stamped, returned and sent and forwarded and all that till it got to this mailbox where we were in grad school. And it was enough for the tuition. I paid the tuition. So when we saw that, I was like, okay, this is how this journey's going to go. And we're just going to, we're not going to have tons of money. but we're going to live in some hard places in the future. And this is going to be important that we're never afraid of money. We got it. Because that, if it's like Elijah laying down and going, all right, I'll see if birds can feed me. And because if he can get birds to feed me, I'll never worry about how can he provide. Not only for me, then Elijah's next level is now, can he provide for me and another person that doesn't believe? So he's like leveling up. And so this was our Elijah, can the ravens feed you? And so, and we were dirt poor. And so we would get up some mornings and just say, Lord, we just need the food for today. And it happened in so many weird ways. One time Dawn and I were just standing in the kitchen. I'm like, I'm going to class. She took classes. I'm like, we got to think about like dinner at some point. And she goes over to look in the refrigerator and there's a $20 bill just stuck on the refrigerator. And we just look at each other and just burst out laughing like, you can't even know how to ask where that came from. One time we had to pay the rent $800 and we went away for the weekend. We came back and there was a newspaper laying on the front porch, and it had been there since Friday. So we were come back on a Sunday. There was a Friday edition of the newspaper. I carried in, I just throw it on the table and like a $20 bill slides out from one of the pages.
What?
And so then we lay the newspaper flat and open it, and every page had different denominations of cash stuck in it, $800. It was like a drug drop. That's what it looked like to me. It looked like
Was it your friend getting back in touch with you? Was it a black Porsche dealing out the newspapers?
But there's the whole rent, and our kids got to watch it. That was the coolest thing. Our kids were little, and they got to see this happen. And then for them, it became kind of a normal, oh, God, put a $20 bill. Oh, God. And interesting, them today, we have 3 sons, are all, we were talking about this earlier, are all quite successful in what they do because they've never been concerned about money, or can God protect them in a different place? But it's because they grew up this is the norm. And so they got to watch all that. And then right when we got to the end of grad school, when that season was over, the University of South Carolina offered me a full-time job. It was just like Israel entered the land and no more manna. But God said, I want you to know that you never have to worry about me taking care of you, because whether you're in, abundance or whatever, that'll never be a factor in how you make a decision. Never. One of our professors in grad school said, never ask how much a job pays until you make sure God said to take it. Then ask him how much it pays. Oof.
And I love how you share how that applies to your children and the effect that that's had on them. Because I grew up in a family where, hearing the story of my grandfather, who literally, when my grandmother was out of town, they had young kids. He was reading the Bible where it said, sell all of your possessions and give to the poor. And he did just that, sold everything. Wow. She came back from visiting her parents in Ohio. He had moved them out of their home, and he gave all the money away. And he'd moved them into a shared home with 7 other families, rat infested, in the Bronx. And they had 1 bedroom for them and 3 toddlers. But the Lord, now it's just crazy to see how God blessed his life from that reckless obedience, especially with finances. So I see those testimonies, and I've, done the same when the Lord has told me to do weird things, particularly around money. Mm-hmm. I just have that trust because I've seen the testimonies that your children have from what they experienced growing up and watching y'all.
Right. You have to experience it, right? You can't just read a book about it. You have to ride the bike. You got to get on the bike. You can't read about it. So, but I think for if you don't believe that my God shall supply all my needs, you're not going to go past that. You won't get past that one. That's got to be the number, especially as a Westerner, where you can't serve 2 masters because you just can't do it. So one's got to go. And so it was almost a relief to be free of that burden of like, how am I going to provide? And what are we going to do? Because then it limits where you can go in the world and what circumstances you can be invited into, because you'll measure it according to can we afford that?
You think so? Is that one of the cool things about your ministry is you've traveled all over the world. You have a really unique perspective. Obviously love this country. It's been so blessed. I'm so proud to be an American. But obviously, I've spent most of my formative experiences here. when you travel around, do you come back with a sense of like, whoa, there's a consumer, or is mammon have a much stronger hold on us in America? And do you feel that God gave you a gift by saying, hey, I'm going to help set you free from that early on, and that's going to help you, so I guess what's the kind of, what can you say about America, in a spiritual climate relative to, what you experience abroad?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think this is, I think it's just a fact of how we're raised is there's so much emphasis on money. I mean, it's just so much emphasis on it, and you don't realize how much there is until you go into another country where they don't have it. But it's not like they miss it. I remember one time we lived in Indonesia for 10 years, and I was teaching in a university, and outside the university was a rice paddy, and there was this old rice farmer that would be out there every day, wading around and planting the rice and harvesting it. And I went out there one day and I was sitting with him, and I said, what do you dream about? What's your dream? What do you dream about when you're sitting here in this rice field every day? And in my perspective, he should have some big dreams, right? And he said, what do you mean? What do I dream about? And I said, well, I mean, beyond the rice paddy. And he goes, there is no dream beyond the rice paddy is my dream. See, because he's content, and we're raised not to be content. In the scriptures, it says, when Paul talks about being content, he's always talking materially. When he says, I've learned to be content in all things, he's talking materially. He's not talking spiritually. Spiritually, he's like, don't be content. Live in divine discontent, hunger for the meat. Don't be content. Like, let's run this race to win. But when we're talking about material possessions, be content. We're upside down. We're content spiritually, very content, but we're not content financially. We want more. We're worried about people taking our stuff. It consumes us. It was a joke for us. When you live in another country, you watch their commercials, you can see what's important to them. Yeah. And when we were overseas and our kids, the first place we lived on an island, an Islamic island, and they only had power every other day. But when you could watch the little TV shows that would come on, the commercials were, because it was Indonesians, and it was always about dandruff and how light or dark your skin was. That's all the commercials were about, how to make your skin lighter, because rich people had lighter skin, and not because they all had black hair, not to have dandruff. That's all the commercials are about. When you get back into the U.S. in the 90s, when we came back, all the commercials were about money and whether or not you had enough money, and whether or not there was something that was going to kill you that your doctor doesn't know about, that you have to tell them what prescription to take. It was, what's your credit rating? Our kids would say, what's our credit rating? Like, they didn't know what that was. Like, I don't know. Like, you got to know your credit rating. Isn't that interesting?
So fear and money.
That's it. And are you going to die? And are you going to die of something that pharmaceutical companies know about that your doctor doesn't know about? So make sure you tell your doctor they need to have this drug to give you. And the fear was like, the fear of like, my skin could be lighter or I have dandruff, versus what's your credit rating and you could be dying and not know it. This is a fear-based culture that we live in, but the enemy is always working in fear everywhere in the world. It's just different degrees of it. So our kids, because they grew up in other countries, and they have never had a real strong desire to come back here because of the anxiety factor that's built into our culture of performance and all of these kinds. And it's like we want to be number one in the world. We do. We want to be number one in the world. Other countries, that's not their goal in life, is to be number one in the world. And so as you're reading scripture, you just have to think, which makes more sense? Does the hand want to be number one in the world, or does it want to be a hand? And the head, what is it? Why do we want number one? If you want to be number one in something, be each one of our identities is our gift to the world. God gave us a unique identity. That identity is our gift to the world. If you want to be number one in something, take that identity to the highest level you can with the Lord and give that to the world. That's competition. That's what we should be doing. Right? So if your identity is like, my identity is untied of knots, that's what the Lord calls me. It's from a verse in Mark. And so when the CIA was testing me, doing all the psychiatric testing, they said to me one day, you're weird because it's like you hate conflict, but you gravitate towards it. You hate it, but you gravitate towards it. Well, I gravitate towards it because I hate it. That's what I want to stop it. right? If I loved conflict, I'd be promoting conflict. I don't. I hate it. So when I get in it, I want to stop it. But the Lord made me to hate it and to go move towards it. And they said, you're weird. You're like a person that sees knots and you just want to untie them all. That's my identity. And that's what they were hiring, was that identity. They didn't know that, but I know that because, like Paul says, in my mother's womb, I was called to the Gentiles. At the right time, God made it known to me, which was later in his life. Right? But the whole time he was called and he was building. And so as humans, all of us, we believe all of us are, created by God in our mother's womb. That's why we value life so much. But when he created you, what did he create when he created you? And then how do you walk in that at the highest possible level you can in whatever vocation you're in? So you become a high performer, but not because you're trying to self-promote and self-protect. You become a high performer so that you can be other-focused, self-emptying, unconditional love for your enemy, like Jesus, Philippians chapter 2. Jesus was the highest performer we'll ever see, the highest achiever, the name above all names. But he wasn't an empire builder.
Mm-hmm.
So you've talked about how God just leveling up and how just different things were practiced for where God took you and living overseas. So tell us about that. What happened? What did God call you to when you got overseas? Where did he take you?
Yeah. So I love that because like everything and the reality that we're in is processes, because God is a God of process. He creates things and they grow and they mature and they die. And then there's resurrection and all of this. And so when you're looking at your life as a process, and Jesus is always saying, come with me, follow me, and I will make you to become. Follow me and I will make you to become. Faithful is he who calls you, who also will do it. It's like, why wouldn't you go? He's the author and the perfecter of my faith. Like, why would I think it's all on me? If I think it's all on me, I'm not going. But if he's the one saying, follow me and I will make you to become that, why wouldn't you go see? And so how that comes is, job promotions or opportunities or however that comes to you. And so when my job description from the State Department, their offer to me was, we want you to infiltrate militant organizations and pacify them. That was my job description.
Untire of knots.
Untire of knots. Exactly right. That's exactly right. And so it was like me sitting in a missions, talking to that State Department guy was like me sitting in a missions conference in a church for another kind of person. God called me forward in a movie theater in a dark place that wasn't the right place. And so I knew that if he was going to level me up further out into the world, he would do it in the way he would call my unique identity. Because we went to a great church. I never went to the missions conferences. I just didn't go. It wasn't my thing. But when the State Department sat there and said, we are inviting you into the Muslim world, I knew that was the Lord going, this is your calling. This is your identity's calling. And people need to know where God will call them. It's not all in one spot for everyone. He calls you all uniquely. So they offered me that position, went to grad school. When we went overseas into Indonesia for the first 10 years or the next phase, so it was a police phase, and now this is phase 2, 10 years in Indonesia. And we went over there. And so again, it was like I had to learn again, because in the police department, you go to the academy, then you get out on the street and you realize some of that works, some of it doesn't. When you walk up to a house and a Catholic priest runs out of the house going, good luck, past you when you're in uniform, and jumps in his car and drives away, they don't train you what to do in that situation in a police academy. And I was training a rookie and he's like, what do we do now? And I'm trust me, whatever is going to happen in that house when you see a priest running out saying good luck, you didn't learn in the police academy, but we will know what to do. Mm-hmm. And so you have those experiences. Then you go over to Indonesia, it's like that plus 5. And so we get over there with our training and realize pretty quickly that our training in that world wasn't effective either. So then we had to go back to God, what do you want us to know? And the way we realized that was I got arrested pretty quick over there.
You have a habit, it seems, of
I'm a hard learner.
Unorthodox behavior leading to some issues.
So I was teaching graduate students thesis writing, and I made a comment about the Quran. There were agitators in my class every day from an Islamic group. And so they were always interrupting me and challenging me in class every day, day after day after day. And one day I just got lazy and I just said an offhand answer, and that's all they wanted was to, I violated the Islamic code when I said what I said, which I did. I'm not denying it. They didn't trap me. I just got lazy and wasn't careful what I said. And so I got charged with insulting the Quran, which is 10 years in prison. And so I got arrested. for that and had to go to trial for it on this little dinky island 10,000 miles away from, with no internet, nothing. There's no, and when I notified the embassy guys, hey, I'm just got arrested. I'm going on trial. It's 10 years in prison and I'm not allowed to testify because I'm not a Muslim and nobody here is going to help me. And the U.S. was like, good luck. You don't have any, there's no value there to us to get involved. So you're just by yourself. And again, so we learned how to live with zero money, but could you live with no help? With no advocate? You're by yourself. 3 million Muslims that don't like you, and you've broken their law, and now you're going to an Islamic court. Is God powerful there, even in that scenario? And, honestly, most of us think God's really strong, powerful in certain places, but there's parts of the world he's just not strong, and we can't go there because he can't go there. Same as the movie theater. It's the movie theater all over again for me. So I go to the trial, and I sitting in the trial, and they're giving the testimony. He's like, this is what he said. It is what I said. This is the law. It's against the law. Yeah, you can't say that in our country. Okay. If they broke the law in my country, we'd put them in jail. We wouldn't hesitate. So just because I'm a Christian doesn't mean I can break any law I want in another country, which sometimes we think we can. But so I was sitting there and I was like, oh, Lord, I'm sorry. I just got lazy. I wasn't paying attention. Like, what do you want me to, like, I'm going to prison for 10 years, but I protect my Jewish wife on this Muslim island because she can't leave. Our kids can't leave. No one can go anywhere. I was more worried about them surviving than me. And I just said, like, what do you want me to know? Like, help me learn from this. So next time I won't make the same mistake. And they heard the testimony and they're like, yeah, does anyone want to say anything in his behalf? And I was just waiting for no one to say anything. But this guy comes in who I didn't know. He's a Muslim because you had to be a Muslim to talk. And so he comes in and he says, I have something to say. And he speaks English. The whole thing's in Indonesian, but he switches to English to impress everybody. And he basically says, I was a PhD student at Arizona State University. I'm a good Muslim. I was going to fail. And the only reason I didn't fail is because 2 Christian guys came and helped me. And they invited me to a Bible study. And I went to a Bible study every Wednesday night for the whole time I was at Arizona State University. Is anyone in this court saying I'm not a good Muslim because I went to a Bible study? He looks around. Everyone's like, no, you're a great Muslim. And he said, so I don't understand if we're higher level Muslim, if Islam is higher level than Christian. And when I went over there, the Christians helped me and could consider me really an enemy. And they helped me and they sacrificed on for my benefit and loved me. And now one of their guys comes over to our greater faith and he makes a mistake in the class. Are we going to put him in jail? I don't think that's right. I just don't think that's right. But you can do whatever you want. And then he walked out and the Muslim cleric goes, I think we need to drop these charges right now. And does anyone disagree? And even the dean that charged me, had his head down. I was like, no. And so they looked at me and said, you're free to go. Now I thought that was an angel, right? So because I knew that he was a Muslim, but I knew he wasn't from that island, never seen him before. And he was so powerful, he could walk in and do that and leave. Yeah. Like that's a powerful person, wasta, they call it. So I walk out and I'm like, but he's leaning up against a tree smoking a cigarette. And I was like, I don't know. Can angels smoke? Maybe not. I couldn't go that far theologically. Probably a guy. So I go up to him and I said, I know I heard you went to Arizona State, but how can you walk in there and do that like that? And he said, did you see who was up in front of the room? And I said, yeah. And he goes, did you see the empty chair? And I said, I did. He said, do you know who sits in that empty chair? And I said, I think normally it's the head of the Islamic Association of Indonesia, all of them, the big, who I knew who that guy was, but he wasn't there. He goes, yeah, do you know why he's not here? And I said, no. And he said, because he was killed yesterday in a car accident. I'm the new one. This is my first day in that position. And he said, I was in Jakarta and I was reading the files and I saw this come up and I flew here to thank my 2 friends at Arizona State, the 2 believers that saved me and my wife there. And he said, I came here to thank them. He said, but I'm going to tell you something. I know you're here because Jesus wants you to be here and wants you to talk to Muslims about Jesus. He said, but you better find another way to say it. Because every time you open your mouth, you offend us and you're going to get killed here saying it the way you say it. Find another way to say it. And I knew that's what the Lord wanted me to hear. It's like, learn how to talk to these people with respect and honor. Don't come over here and insult them. I knew that as a cop. I knew I knew never walk into a neighborhood like it's your neighborhood. It's their neighborhood, honor. I knew that. But somehow when we shifted into Muslim culture, I went into this old school brain of like, they're all bad. We're the good guys. They don't know what's going on. We're going to correct them. And it's just insulting to them. And so the Lord taught me two things that day, me and Donna and our kids, is there's nowhere you can go where he's not with you. You don't need a million Americans backing you up on a prayer list. They can pray for you, but you don't need them on an internet list to rescue you. When no one needs to know where you are. He's always with you. And you need to say things to people the way he wants you to say them. So when it's like when I say this all the time, Jesus didn't come to tell us what to do. He came to show us how to know what to do. He's not saying to the disciples, when you talk to a person, say these three things. When you say, he's saying, ask me how I knew to talk to that woman you didn't even see. How did I know? How did I see her? Because I only do what I see the Father doing. Ask me how I knew what to say to her. I only say what I hear the Father saying. So don't get good at memorizing what other people tell you to say. Get good at hearing what the Father says and say that.
So 2 questions for you. I'm just curious, in all of these kind of adventures in prayer you've had, have you ever actually wound up in a jail cell, or has the Lord always shown up?
No. Oh, yes. Yeah, yes, we've ended up in jail. We've been, we got abducted in Iraq, me and our family, all of us together. We got separated, but we were abducted in the same instant. Yeah. And then we were, I don't want to say the country where we've been in a jail cell, but yes, we have, me and Donna both.
And you don't recommend it?
I think it's unavoidable. I don't recommend it, but it's unavoidable. Yeah.
And did the Lord show up to get you out of that situation?
We got out of it just because they went through their process and prosecuted the way they wanted to do it. And it ended up, to where they were satisfied with the prosecution, but we didn't get out of it. It was super traumatizing and painful. What's interesting is, I think the key in a situation like that, any situation you're in, is just keep asking the Lord, like, not how do you get out of it? What do you want us to know about what's happening? And then what do you want us to do? Because he may want you to go through the process. Did I want to get arrested in Indonesia and go through that whole trial thing? No, but he wanted me to learn something and never forget it. And it's like I said, riding a bike, you have to experience it. Otherwise it's just head knowledge to you. It's like you're disrespecting these people. I want you to understand how deeply you're disrespecting them. My training officer taught me that the first midnight shift, that same lesson. I just didn't translate it from the street to another country. And the Lord's like, well, we're going to do this lesson again. Right? Just like the disciples throwing out the net a second time when Jesus redoes the lesson for them. It's like, but this time, run to Jesus. Don't say. So yeah, we went through the process, and we always ask the Lord, what do you want us to know? And he will always tell you what he wants you to know. If you ask him why, rarely answers, because you just wouldn't get it. But what do you want me to know in this situation? And then once I know what you want me to know, okay, now then what do you want us to do? And sometimes it was like, you need to just go through this.
Your stories are so mind-blowing, but what I love about hearing them is you are so quick to say, this is not you. It is all God. And I feel like they are awe-inspiring, but you want to remind everyone that it is from the Lord and from listening to the Lord. And I'm sure as you've shared this, there have been other police officers, detectives, other people who've probably come to you saying, how can I put this into practice? Are you discipling other detectives to do this same thing?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We have a company called Identity Exchange, and that's what we do. We train sports teams. We just did 22 supervisors for a police department. We've done metropolitan police departments, 8 at a time, walking them through this process of understanding your true identity, how to deal with fear. Yes. So that's what we do. It's because it doesn't make any difference if the person, it's not famous people. It's all people are extraordinary because they have a unique identity in the kingdom. And when you discover who you actually are, that's one part of the process. And then understand, okay, how is God going to walk me forward to grow in this identity? And what are the things that are going to stop me? Fear, guilt, shame, the killers. So how do we overcome fear, guilt, and shame? So that when you get into situations, the situations I'm telling sound like remarkable, but I'm only doing the same thing I would do as if I was just talking to a person in my neighborhood, and I'd be asking the Lord, what do you want me to say to this person right now? Is no different than when we're in the middle of the Sahara Desert and the imam is screaming, let's kill him right now, right on the spot. Let's just kill him right now. I'm asking the same question because honestly, that human is the same as my neighbor in the States. We have a way of making situations bigger and smaller. They're not. They're the same. And so what you practice in the quiet, you practice in the big situation. You learn it in the quiet times.
That's funny. We've heard that on every single interview is some form of God prepares in private what he wants to do publicly.
Yes,
and when what did you do when no one's looking?
That's right.
Influences what's going to happen. So that's so cool. So, Jamie, we had a little bit of chance to talk last night at dinner about this worldview of kingdom versus empire,
right.
And what you do in identity exchange. And one of the things I loved so much and why we wanted to have you on is in your sermons, you do such a beautiful job contrasting the sort of worldly scarcity thinking that we are all formed into, not by choice, whether
right.
it's zero-sum game, whether it's missing out on something, shame and guilt of not achieving enough, what the world says, this is what I'm supposed to be or else I've not made it. And then it seems like through a lot of your process, you help people rediscover that they don't actually have to live in bondage to these narratives that the world places on us. So could you talk a little bit about this kingdom versus empire dynamic? And then maybe we can get into how this affects everything from vocational calling, how we live our lives, maybe even, dating and relationships, et cetera.
Yeah. So basically, this was just from years of being out we may work mainly in conflict zones, conflict areas in the world. And so we're going into groups of people that have been at odds for centuries, hundreds and hundreds of years. And if we can't go back into the history of every country and figure out where did this all start, there's got to be just some basic things. And the book of James says, if you want to know why there's wars among you, it's pretty simple. There's a war inside of you. That's how simple that answer is to that question. We come up with all these complicated, there's a war inside of you, the individual, not the country, you and you and you. And if there's a war inside of you, you can't give away what you don't have. If there's conflict here, you're going to produce conflict out here. So the question is, where's the conflict coming from inside of you? And the conflict inside of humans is a result of fear. That's why the number one exhortation in all of Scripture is don't be afraid. If you take fear out of situations, humans can resolve it. But when they come in fear, then they have a conflict going on inside of them and they can't resolve a conflict because a good tree produces good fruit, but a bad tree, it's going to produce a bad fruit. And so what's the fear from? The fear is from you have a wrong view of yourself, a wrong view of God, and a wrong view of the world that you're in. It's the upside down of the great commandment. Love God, love your neighbor, love yourself. When that's inverted, you're going to have a false sense of yourself, which creates anxiety inside of a human because it's not right. You just know it's not right. And so you operate in a worldview of separation. That's the worldview where the idea is it's me against them. How early did you learn that in your life? You learn it immediately. We're the good team. They're the bad team. You have to be afraid of them. Why do you have to be afraid of them? Because they're going to take away what's yours. And every conflict in the world, that's what it is. We have this, we want that. Just like little kids in nursery school. I want that toy. Why? Because somehow that toy gives me identity. And if I lose that toy, I lose identity. So humans are raised with this separation worldview. So we want to separate these people from these people from these people, or the good guys from the bad guys, because there's not enough for everyone to go around. It's all scarcity. So in a scarcity worldview, you have to look for certainty. So we have to be sure that everything we do works. Because if it doesn't work, we're going to miss the opportunity, and there's not unlimited opportunity. There's limited opportunity and there's limited time. It's just we got to get to all of it now because it's going to be too late. And even believers are very much into we're running out of time. We're on these time schedules to do things. But Jesus never runs anywhere. He's never we got to do this. We're running out of time. It's at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. What time? The right time. not too soon. He wasn't in a hurry. Now's the time. Now is the will of God fulfilled in me, like now. And so, but we're taught, like, get to it. You got, you know, by third grade, you got to be doing this. And if you're not, even God really can't help. That's the deep sense we have inside of ourselves. And it's all based on the lie that we're somehow separated from God in some way. Think about God is omnipresent. He's omnipresent. How do you separate from an omnipresent God? You can't. And you're in his presence. He's talking to you all the time. The lie is that you're separate and he's not talking to you. That's the lie. That's the whole lie. So when Adam and Eve believe the lie, they live separate lives. They go to live separate from God. He didn't go anywhere. And he won't stay separate. He goes and finds them. And what does he do? He connects back with them. And that's the connected worldview.
So practically speaking, and obviously people, they should read your book, Living Fearlessly. And I know you have some incredible teachings out there, but at a high level, for the average person who says, yeah, I struggle with anxiety, I struggle with shame. I conflate Kairos and Chronos. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my time. You know, and I feel like I feel like my best opportunities are behind me. Right. What are some practical things you would say to listeners to this to say, hey, you know, let me show you what kingdom building is, and you know, maybe the zero sum game stuff, all that stuff. What would you say to them?
Yeah. So I would say to any person that I'm talking to, I always ask humans, and I think this is just what Jesus is constantly addressing in people is, who do you think you are? Like, tell me who you think you are. And and then tell me who you think I am. Jesus is saying that. Tell me who you think I am and who you think you are, because I'm telling you both, whatever you're going to say is going to be less than both of them. You're more than who you think you are, and I'm way more than who you think I am. And so when we're talking to people, I always ask them, tell me in your life, what are you most afraid of in your life right now? Fear is the beautiful God-given emotion that points to things that you believe about yourself, God, and the world. It's not true. That's what fear does. Fear points to things that you're going to do or believe that hurt you. That's the value of it. So address the fear. Don't pray it away. Don't say, oh, I got to be brave. Say, Lord, what am I afraid of? Help, search me and know me. Reveal to me any way in that's not pleasing to you, that is offensive, and lead me in the way everlasting. What am I afraid of? And then to the person is like, I'm afraid that I am what? A failure. I am not good enough. I didn't make it. These are identity statements that I'm a bad dad, that I am all these things that create this huge fear in us because it destroys us, these lies. So like I might say to a man, look Jesus right in the eye right now and ask him what kind of father he thinks you are. Ask him right now, what kind of father does he think you are? They won't do it because they're positive he's going to accuse them. But God's not the accuser of men. Satan is the accuser of men. But we have made God the accuser. And so we're afraid to go and tell the truth. We're afraid to get him. He would say to us, you're a great dad, but why don't you act like it? That's what he would say. You're an amazing dad. Why won't you be an amazing dad? What are you afraid of? Like, this is how he addresses it. And so when you say, I'm afraid that I'm a disappointment. That's my big struggle. I'm a disappointment. Then the next question is, it's what God asked Adam and Eve. Who told you you were a disappointment? Who told you to be ashamed? I didn't tell you to be ashamed. God didn't tell Adam and Eve to be ashamed. They've taken on the identity of what ashamed people do. And he said, I didn't tell you that you were naked. I didn't do any of this. You're listening to a lie, and the lie is producing fear in you that creates separation. And now you're covering the very thing that I made with your own stuff. This is the false identity. So where did you learn that you're a disappointment? For me, my mom told me all the time I was, because I didn't want to go to the little kid Bible study in our neighborhood. And she would look at me and go, you're a disappointment to God and me. Man, that drills an identity into a kid. Like, oh, God's only pleased with people that go to that Bible study. It took me, I was 40 before I realized God said to me, I never wanted you in that Bible study. I made you to go to places where there are no Bible studies. And at 40, when I finally got over the guilt and shame of being a disappointment, because no one ever told me I could go to God and say, did you call me a disappointment? He's like, I never called you that. What did you call me? I call you an untier of knots to be in a place There's lots of people that want to be in that Bible study. I made you to be over here where these people don't have a Bible study. I want you to love being there, not here. I don't want you to be here. I don't even want you to like it. Right? But we're so drilled, like these are the right people. You got to be certain, and you're separate from all of this. And so God's always connecting back with us. He connects with us, and then we connect with other people. And this is the connection worldview that's not certainty, it's mystery. It's not scarcity, it's enough. It's not certainty, it's mystery. It's not perfection, it's fallibility, it's learning. It's the beautiful part of, oh, I made a mistake. We're going to prison. Wait, what? But this is how you learn. Don't dishonor people. Don't dishonor people, because we're not done here. We're going to a way harder place even than Indonesia, but you got to learn to honor people here. Right? And so when you're living in it, stay connected to God, stay connected to yourself, stay connected to the people around you, the world around you. The great commandment, all the law and the prophets come underneath this main thing. And so when you're connected, then you can be other focused. If you're separate and you're worried about, I got to be perfect and I got to get this thing right, and there's limited opportunity, you can't be other focused. You have to be self-focused.
Amen.
I would just say, for anyone listening, thinking, I want a relationship like that, I want to be able to hear from God. What is your best advice? Where can they start?
Get alone. Get alone with God and say, teach me to hear your voice. Just because he's been talking to you the whole time and you just aren't listening. It's like I was with a bunch of public school principals, 50 of them in our city, and they let me come in to talk about identity into the public. The superintendent let me in, and I said to the principals in the first 5 minutes, how many of you can hear a voice in your head that says you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not talented enough, you're just not good enough at what you do and what you aspire to be? How many of you can hear that voice? All of them raised their hands. Okay, good. We all believe now that we can hear voices. Good. We all agree. We all agree. We all know that voice 100 times. We all know the critic. How many of you can hear a voice that says you're loved with an everlasting love, and you are enough all the time, and I'm so proud of you? How many can hear that voice? Nobody can hear that voice. Is it because that voice isn't talking? No, it's because we're trained to hear the other one. Right? And all we're doing is saying, I just said, I'm going to teach you how to shut the one down and turn the other one up. That's all we're going to do. That's what we do. Get in a room and say, this is the voice I hear all the time. I'm a disappointment. I blew an opportunity. I'm a sinner, blah, blah, blah. All the accusations and lies of the enemy. I can hear them so clear. Can you shut those down in the name of Jesus? And Lord, would you just let me hear that still small voice that tells me the truth about who you are, who I am, and who my neighbor is? And you have to listen so carefully, and it starts to hear it. But the more you listen, the louder it gets. And then the Lord's like, okay, now let's go into a hurricane together, because you can still hear it at that level. Amen. And then off you go.
All right. Last thing, Jamie. And, to anyone out there is like, because one thing I love about your teachings is you've mentioned that you and Don are getting to do stuff that you had inklings of, hints of, words of, that you're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that was going to take 30, 40 years to fulfill. But for anyone, you mentioned in the right time, for anyone also who's listening and saying, I missed out. Yeah, Jamie works with young people because it's like that's when they get formed. But I didn't get that. Is it too late for me? Because even in that question there's an inherent assumption. But maybe you could just give a quick word to anyone who's going, I think I missed the opportunity. I missed out. I missed out on my opportunity to serve God well, and now he's moved on to someone else who's more obedient. Anything you'd say to that?
So, that's the scarcity of opportunity lie, right? That God has limited opportunities, and if you miss it, you miss it. But just not true. Not even in Scripture. Moses goes off for 40 years and comes back again. And we were at a retreat a while ago, and I didn't even know who was there. We were just invited in to speak. So we're speaking. I speak on identity and the things we're talking about here. And I get up the next morning, and there's a man there. He was 87. I had no idea who he was. And he had written down 10 pages of things God said to him because of what I said the night before. He didn't know. He's a believer. He didn't know you could sit and ask God questions and God would talk back to you. He had a legal pad of 10 pages. He was 87 years old. He goes, I got to get to work. And
Love that.
And he called me maybe 2 nights before he died in his 90s. And those years, 87 on, he was said were the most exhilarating years of his life. And he didn't God doesn't come and say, I want you to regret that you learned this at 87. He never would say anything to you like that. He's like, with God never wastes time. No time has been wasted. No time has ever been wasted. You can't waste time. That's a lie the enemy tells us all the time. And we believe it. Mm-hmm. God's like, we have eternity. Like, this isn't it. You don't get one shot and then it's over with. It's like, that's our own invention too, of fear, and you have to get it done. So never too late. And then when you're praying, it's like, Lord, just restore back to me the years that locusts have taken away. I missed 20 years of this. Can you give me the 20 back? He loves doing that kind of stuff. He's the creator of time. He's not a victim of time. Mm-hmm. We've made God a victim of time. He's not.
That's it. Jamie, where can people follow you, learn more about what you do at Identity Exchange, get your books? Don't be humble here. This is your chance, plug, let's make you number one.
Just our website, identityexchange.com. We have a lot of great courses. We have great coaches that people can connect with that are fabulous at walking people through this. My book, Living Fearless, we have the Living Fearless guided journal just came out, which is a good journal with exercises to walk through. Just practice listening, practice hearing and doing what you hear God tell you, through a progression. And then have another book coming out on worldviews, but it's not out yet, so we'll have to wait for that. It's coming out.
Here, but not yet, right? Exactly. It's coming soon.
It'll come out at the right time.
That's right. And you would say also, just in all your expertise, wisdom, and walking with the Lord, that CBN, people should support CBN as much as possible, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Just making sure. I want to get
Thanks for that.
I want to get that subtlety on record.
Thanks for having me here.
Jamie, this was, I think I speak for everyone in the room. That was mind-blowing, to say the least. Abby, anything else?
I have so many takeaways from this. It's just amazing.
Our Instagram feed thanks you. There's a lot that's going to be on there. I hope you'll come back and visit us again.
I'd love to. Yeah.
This was
Anytime.
so awesome.
Anytime.
So God bless you, Jamie.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Thank you.